The oppressive July heat had baked the very air into a thick, shimmering, breathable haze over the Oak Creek community pool. It was a landscape of brutally saturated color, the impossible chemical turquoise of the water, the brilliant manicured green of the surrounding lawns, and the glaring, painful white of the concrete deck that reflected the sun with merciless intensity. Laughter sharp and joyful as birdsong echoed in sporadic bursts, weaving through the steady, laid-back hypnotic rhythm of a reggae song, drifting from a small, tinny speaker. It was the very picture of suburban paradise, a carefully curated and fiercely protected haven from the chaos of the world outside. A shadow fell across that paradise, sharp-edged and sudden as an axe stroke. Kill the music. Now the command laced with the sharp barking cadence of a drill sergeant sliced through the tranquil atmosphere. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every head turned in unison towards the source of the disruption. A woman standing at the pool gate, her body held so rigid with self-righteous fury, it seemed she might shatter. She wore expensive, immaculate graphite gray athletic apparel, a uniform for a different kind of combat. In her hand, she gripped a smartphone, holding it up high and steady as if she were a war correspondent documenting a crime scene. This was Brenda Millwood. She hadn't just come for a swim. She'd come for a reckoning. At the head lifeguard stand, perched high above the shimmering water, Maya Vance watched Brenda's purposeful approach through her polarized sunglasses. Maya had a lean, economical build, a quiet stillness about her that was somehow more unnerving than any overt display of strength or authority. She had seen this coming for weeks, like watching a storm gather on a distant horizon. Brenda was a new resident, a woman who had moved into the affluent community and immediately set about identifying, cataloging, and magnifying every perceived flaw. She was campaigning for a vacant seat on the HOA board, and her entire platform was built on a meticulously crafted foundation of fear. Fear of lax security, fear of declining property values, fear of incompetence. The Lifeguards, young, tan, and seemingly carefree, were her chosen poster children for that incompetence. Maya subtly touched the brim of her cap, a small, prearranged signal. Across the pool, 3 other guards, seemingly oblivious, acknowledged it with imperceptible nods. There was Liam, whose boyish freckled face made him look younger than his 21 years, his focus already narrowing like a camera lens. There was Chloe, her jaw set, her posture radiating a coiled, fierce impatience. And there was David, broad-shouldered and seemingly placid as a mountain, but whose eyes missed nothing, constantly scanning, assessing. To the parents scattered around the pool, sipping iced lattes and scrolling through their phones, they were just summer hires. An anonymous, interchangeable team of college kids. Brenda marched directly to the edge of the water, ignoring Maya completely, as if she were a piece of furniture. She pointed her phone directly at the deep end, where her 10-year-old son Leo was treading water. "Help!" Leo shouted, his voice thin and unconvincing, cracking with the strain of his performance. I'm cramping my leg." He began to thrash in the water, a clumsy, theatrical, over-the-top performance of distress that wouldn't have earned him a passing grade in a middle school drama class. Brenda's voice rang out loud and dripping with accusation, for the benefit of her audience. Response time test. Let's see what our highly paid professionals do now. The clock is ticking. But before Brenda had even finished her smug, self-satisfied sentence, a blur of motion exploded from the lifeguard stands. It wasn't the frantic, panicked dash she had clearly expected and hoped to capture on video. It was a symphony of terrifying, practiced efficiency. Maya was off her stand and hitting the water in a clean, powerful, shallow-angle dive that barely made a splash, her body a projectile aimed with deadly accuracy. Simultaneously, Liam was on his feet, his hand already grabbing the emergency trauma bag, while David blew a series of sharp, deafening blasts on his whistle. His voice, a booming, authoritative roar that commanded instant obedience. Everybody out of the water. Clear the pool. Now Maya reached the flailing, play-acting boy in seconds. She didn't ask questions. She didn't coddle him. She secured him in a perfect cross-chest, carry her movements fluid and automatic, turning his head to keep his airway clear as she powered back towards the side with powerful churning kicks. The entire event, from Leo's first unconvincing cry to Maya's hand hitting the rough edge of the pool, took less than 15 seconds. She lifted the now silent, shame-faced boy from the water with an ease that belied his weight and laid him on the hot concrete. Liam was already there, kneeling beside him, his hands hovering ready, his eyes scanning for any real symptoms. Leo sat up, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Mom, I'm fine. Can we go?" Brenda lowered her phone, a triumphant, venomous smirk twisting her lips. 17 seconds, she announced to the stunned and silent crowd of parents who had scrambled out of the water and were now watching wide-eyed. "Unacceptable. In a real drowning, permanent brain damage starts in under 1 minute. Your response was hesitant, chaotic, and completely unprofessional. Get out." Maya said, her voice dangerously low as she rose to her full height, water sheeting off her. Her face, usually so placid and calm, was a mask of cold, controlled fury. "What did you say to me?" Brenda spat, taking a step forward. "You work for me. I am a homeowner here." "Your son was never in danger from the water." Brenda, Maya said, her voice like ice. "The only danger here today is you. You faked an emergency. You deliberately put your own child at risk and diverted our attention from the actual children in this pool for a pathetic, disgusting political stunt." "I did what any concerned parent would do." Brenda shot back, her voice ringing with practiced indignation. "I exposed a fatal flaw in our safety system. I will be submitting this video to the board and demanding your immediate termination. All of you." A few parents, already members of Brenda's flock, nodded in agreement. "She's right," one woman said. "We pay your salaries. We deserve to know you're competent." The pressure was mounting, a palpable wave of hostility directed at the 4 lifeguards. That night, an email blast went out to the entire Oak Creek HOA. It was from Brenda, under the heading, "Brenda Millwood for HOA Board, a commitment to our children's safety." The email contained a heavily edited video of the incident, masterfully cutting out Leo's theatrical acting and the swiftness of the initial response. It focused on the supposed 17-second delay and the chaotic clearing of the pool. It was a masterpiece of fear-mongering painting, a vivid picture of a negligent, incompetent lifeguard team and a complacent, do-nothing HOA board. It ended with a fiery call to action, an emergency pool safety town hall meeting, to be held in the community clubhouse, where residents could hold the board and their contractors accountable for endangering our families. The weak-willed HOA board, terrified of lawsuits and swayed by the wave of anxious, angry emails Brenda had orchestrated, buckled in less than a day. They scheduled the town hall. They sent a formal, sternly worded notice to the Lifeguard contracting company, placing Maya and her entire team on paid administrative review and requiring their attendance at the meeting to answer community concerns. Maya, Liam, Chloe, and David were being put on public trial. The evening of the town hall. The air outside the clubhouse was thick with tension. Brenda had organized a small but vocal protest, a gauntlet her team had to walk through. Parents held signs that read, "Competence, not kids," and "No more negligence." As Maya and her team approached, the crowd began to chant, "Fire them! Fire them!" A man stepped in front of Maya, his face red with anger. "You should be ashamed of yourself," he snarled. "Taking money to sit around and get a tan while our kids could be dying." David moved silently, placing his broad frame between the man and Maya. "Back off," he said, his voice a low rumble. "We're just here for the meeting." The confrontation grew heated, a vortex of shouting and pointing fingers, until the HOA president nervously came out and pleaded for everyone to come inside. Shaken Maya led her team into the packed room, the jeers of the crowd following them. The clubhouse meeting room was overflowing, the air thick with anxiety, anger, and the scent of righteous indignation. Brenda stood at a podium at the front, radiant with power soaking in the atmosphere she had created. She had distributed glossy, professionally printed flyers with her smiling, confident face on them, lying on every single chair. Maya and her team sat in a row of chairs, facing the crowd, isolated and exposed like defendants in a show trial. Maya noticed a small pin on Brenda's lapel, a stylized eagle. She'd seen it before on the cars of proud military parents. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth. Brenda tapped the microphone, a sharp, percussive sound that silenced the room instantly. "Thank you all for coming." She began, her voice smooth and confident, the voice of a leader. "We are here tonight because our community's most precious asset, our children, are being protected by undertrained, undersupervised, and, as we all saw on video, underperforming individuals." She gestured dramatically towards the 4 silent lifeguards. These children were hired by some faceless corporation 100 miles away. We don't know their real backgrounds. We don't know their real qualifications. We only know that when they were tested, they failed. I am here tonight to ask the hard questions the board was too afraid to ask. I am here to demand a new standard for Oak Creek. She was about to launch into her long list of prepared accusatory questions when a real cry went up from the back of the room. It wasn't a performance. It was a raw, strangled, panicked scream. "He can't breathe. Oh my God! Somebody help him!" A small boy, no older than 7, had collapsed near the refreshments table. His face was puffy and swollen. His lips were turning a terrifying, dusky shade of blue, and he was making a high-pitched, desperate wheezing sound. Strider, the sound of a closing airway. Chaos erupted. People screamed and scrambled away. Someone fumbled with their phone trying to dial 911. Brenda froze at the podium, her carefully prepared speech, forgotten her face, a mask of pure, helpless horror. But the 4 lifeguards were already moving. They didn't run. They flowed through the panicked parting crowd as if it were water. Their movements were not chaotic. They were a precise, interlocking, unspoken ballet of emergency response, honed in the crucible of real-world trauma. Anaphylaxis. Maya shouted, her voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel, a command tone that seized control of the room. "Chloe, get the bag. David, clear the airway, check for obstruction. Liam, time it. Note exact onset of symptoms." Her commands were clear, concise, and instantly obeyed. David was at the child's side in a heartbeat, gently tilting his head back, his large, powerful hands surprisingly delicate as he checked the boy's mouth. Chloe returned in seconds, ripping open the trauma bag she had against regulations, but by instinct and training brought with her from the pool house. She pulled out an EpiPen. "Is he yours?" Maya asked the hysterical mother, her voice a point of calm in the storm of panic. "Does he have a known allergy? Is this his prescribed pen?" "Yes, bees. He was just stung outside," the mother sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at the red welt on her son's arm. Permission to administer. Maya's voice was steady a rock. "Yes, please do something." Maya took the EpiPen, uncapped it with a single fluid motion, and plunged it firmly into the boy's outer thigh, holding it there for a hard count of 3. Liam vitals. Now Liam had a stethoscope, seemingly produced from nowhere, and was listening to the boy's chest, his young face a mask of intense concentration. Wheezing is diminishing. Respiration shallow, but... Wait. His face went pale. He's not breathing. No pulse. He's in arrest. The air was sucked out of the room. The boy on the floor was dying. "Start compressions," Maya commanded, her voice like steel. "Liam, 30-2, I'll bag him." She pulled an ambu bag from the kit, fitted the mask over the boy's face. And as Liam began the rhythmic, forceful compressions that were the only thing keeping the child alive, she squeezed the bag, forcing air into his lungs. The quiet, rhythmic count of the CPR, the whoosh of the bag, was the only sound in the now silent, horrified room. The wail of approaching sirens grew louder. 2 paramedics burst through the door with a gurney and a defibrillator. The lead paramedic, a grizzled veteran named Frank, with tired, kind eyes, took one look at the scene. The child on the floor, the seamless CPR, the spent EpiPen, the calm, terrifying efficiency of the four figures working on him, and stopped short. He stared at Maya's face, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights. His eyes widened in disbelief and dawning recognition. Holy hell, he breathed, his voice a reverent whisper. Staff Sergeant Vance. Is that you? Maya looked up, her focus breaking for the first time, her hands never stopping their life-saving rhythm. Hey Frank, it's been a while. A memory flared in her mind, hot and unwanted. Frank's face, younger, then lit by the red glow of a chopper interior, screaming over the rotor wash, as she worked frantically to stop a pilot from bleeding out, the entire world shaking around them. He's crashing, Maya! He's crashing! She pushed it down. Stay in the now. Frank and his partner took over their movements, slotting in seamlessly, with the work already done. We have a pulse, Frank's partner shouted a moment later. He's back. A wave of collective relief washed through the room, so powerful, it was almost a physical force. Frank looked back at Maya, with an expression of profound respect. Folks, he announced to the silent watching room, his voice ringing with authority, I don't know what you're paying these lifeguards, but I can guarantee you it is not enough. This boy could not have been in better hands if he'd collapsed in the middle of a level 1 trauma center. He then looked directly at Brenda, who stood frozen, a statue of obsolescence at the podium. You people have any idea who you've been harassing? He pointed at Maya. This is Staff Sergeant Maya Vance. She was an Air Force para-rescue man, a PJ. That means she was an elite combat search and rescue medic. The military drops people like her behind enemy lines to save downed pilots and special operators. I once saw her perform chest surgery with a pocket knife in the back of a Black Hawk while we were taking enemy fire. A collective audible gasp swept the room. It was the sound of 100 people's realities being violently rearranged. Frank wasn't done. He gestured to the other three who stood back, now their work done. And I'd bet my pension these three aren't just some college kids on summer break either. Chloe spoke first, her voice hard, as nails stepping forward into the light. Hospital Corpsman, 2nd Class, United States Navy. 2 combat tours in Helmand Province, attached to the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. Liam was next, his voice steady, despite his youth. Hospital Corpsman, 3rd Class, attached to a Marine Force Recon unit, conducting direct action operations. Finally, David's deep voice rumbled through the stunned silence. Corpsman, 1st Class. I was an instructor for the Tactical Combat Casualty Care Course for West Coast SEAL teams at Coronado for 5 years. The truth descended upon the room, not as a reveal, but as a series of controlled detonations. The silence that followed was absolute, profound, and utterly devastating to the woman still standing frozen at the podium. A woman in the crowd suddenly cried out, "Oh my God! Maya, you saved my husband last year. The car accident on the interstate. You were the first one there. You pulled him out of the car." Brenda Millwood stared, her face ashen, her mouth agape. Her entire campaign, her entire identity in this community was built on a monumental lie she had told herself and everyone else. She hadn't been protecting the children. She had been publicly tormenting a team of elite combat veterans. Her petty staged emergency at the pool was a child's game compared to the real-life crisis they had just effortlessly, heroically dismantled. Her town hall hadn't exposed their incompetence. It had provided the perfect stage for their breathtaking, humbling skill. Brenda opened her mouth, a last desperate gasp for relevance. This changes nothing. Their qualifications are not the issue. The issue is their performance at our pool. Ma'am, Frank the paramedic cut in, his voice dripping with contempt. The only performance issue I see here tonight is yours. Shut up. Then a small voice piped up from the crowd. It was Leo, Brenda's son. He pushed his way to the front, his face streaked with tears. She's a hero, he cried, pointing at Maya. I knew it. She has a medal in her locker. I saw it. It has a parachute on it. I told you, Mom. I told you she was a real hero, and you didn't believe me." That was the final fatal blow. Her own son, in his misguided attempt to defend the woman his mother had tried to destroy, had delivered the coup de grace. The HOA president, his face pale with the realization of the catastrophe he had courted by entertaining Brenda, strode to the podium. He took the microphone from her limp, unresisting hand. "This meeting is over," he announced, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and relief. "Brenda Millwood, your candidacy for the HOA board is hereby rejected. A formal complaint will be filed against you for child endangerment for the faked incident at the pool. On behalf of this entire community, I want to offer our deepest, most profound apologies to these four heroes for the inexcusable treatment they have received." Brenda was escorted out of the room, not by security, but by the crushing, silent weight of the contemptuous stares of her neighbors. The next morning, Maya sat by the quiet closed pool before her shift. She pulled a worn photograph from her wallet. It was of her and her PJ team, grinning in the desert sun, arms slung around each other. So many of them were gone now. She ran a thumb over a smiling face, then carefully tucked the photo away as her team arrived for work. The Millwood family moved out within 2 months, unable to withstand the quiet, complete, and unrelenting ostracization. The community, in an act of collective atonement, started a fundraiser in the Lifeguards' names for a national veterans charity, raising over $50,000 in a single week. The pool was no longer just a place to cool off. It was a sanctuary, watched over by quiet guardians. One afternoon, weeks later, Maya saw a figure standing by the fence at the far end of the parking lot. It was Brenda, looking smaller, diminished. She watched Maya for a long moment, an unreadable expression on her face, before turning and walking away, disappearing for good. The reggae music still played over the small speaker, but now, underneath its cheerful rhythm, everyone could hear a new sound, a steady, reassuring, and profoundly safe heartbeat, forged in crisis and proven beyond all doubt under fire.